Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Vanessa Renee Rankins. Rankins died on Wednesday, March 24, 2010, a day after she was shot in the 13,000 block of Penny Street in Pacoima, according to LA County coroner records. Horacio Gonzalez and Christian Adame were subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. Defendant Horacio Gonzalez, known as Casper, belonged to Pacoima Flats. He was a friend of defendant Christian Adame, nicknamed Fresh or Smooth, who belonged to another gang, the Pacoima Project Boys. Eric Davalos testified that he was hanging out with Gonzalez and Adame on March 23, 2010. Around 5 p.m., the trio went to Gonzalez's house on Fillmore Street in Pacoima and hung out in the backyard. Gonzalez was wearing black. At some point after dark, about 4 to 6 hours after they began hanging out in the backyard, Gonzalez said, "Let's go." Gonzalez and Adame left Davalos alone in the yard for about 20 minutes. While they were gone, Davalos heard something that sounded like a shooting. Davalos testified that Gonzalez and Adame had firearms in their hands when they left. According to Davalos, Adame had a handgun and Gonzalez had an AK or some type of automatic weapon. Gonzalez and Adame returned to the yard less than 10 minutes after Davalos heard the shooting noises. Davalos testified that when Gonzalez and Adame re-entered the yard, Gonzalez was holding two guns and Adame was holding his arm as if it were injured. Davalos described one of the guns as a handgun and said that the other looked like an assault rifle. Gonzalez stowed both guns between the yard's wooden fence and a board that was leaning up against it. Gonzalez and Adame then began trying to figure out how to get to a hospital. Gonzalez eventually made a phone call and a woman named Crazy arrived at the house, picked up Gonzalez, Adame, and Davalos and drove them to Brotman Hospital. During the approximately 30-minute drive to the hospital, which was more than 25 miles away, Adame, who continued to hold his arm, said that he and Gonzalez had opened fire on a group of black people on Penny Street. According to Davalos, Adame said that he and Gonzalez walked away from the group, turned around, and then started bugging on or shooting at them. Davalos testified that Adame said that he was injured when the people in the group shot back. LAPD officer Nicholas Torres testified that he was dispatched to Brotman Hospital to speak to a shooting victim at approximately 11:50 p.m. on March 23, 2010. He identified the victim as Adame. Adame was uncooperative but told Torres that he had been shot near Venice Beach on Oceanfront Walk and Washington Boulevard. Neither Torres nor another police officer who testified, Kevin Pierce, received any other reports of a shooting in the Venice Beach area that evening. The police did receive multiple reports of a shooting on Penny Street near Pala Avenue in Pacoima at around 10 p.m. on the evening of March 23rd. Detective Corey Farrell was dispatched to the scene, which was approximately 4 blocks from Gonzalez's home and just north of the San Fernando Gardens at about 11 p.m. The ballistic evidence suggested that 2 people shot in one direction. Farrell also spotted graffiti, the letters PF and PJB near the scene. Farrell, who had worked as a uniformed gang officer for 2 years, testified that those letters were associated with Pacoima Flats and Project Boys. Farrell looked for but did not find any weapons associated with the incident. None of the 18 firearms later recovered during the search of Gonzalez's home matched those used in the shooting. After concluding his initial examination of the scene, Farrell traveled to Holy Cross Hospital to speak to some of the shooting victims. Farrell was unable to speak with the shooting victims there. T. Caver was in surgery, and Vanessa Rankins, who later died from the single gunshot wound to the head she sustained, was in grave condition. Farrell also went to Mission Community Hospital to speak to A. Jones, who had been shot in the leg, and to USC Medical Center to speak to E. Bradshaw. T. Caver testified that on the night of March 23, 2010, he drove to the 13,000 block of Penny Street to visit someone staying there. A lot of people often hung around outside the front of that house, and Caver had heard that the house had some connection to drug activity. When Caver pulled up, he saw a crowd of people outside the house but only recognized Perry and Happy Jack. Caver parked his car on Pala. When he got out of his car, he saw 2 unfamiliar people across the street on the opposite corner of Pala and Penny. As Caver began to walk to the house, Perry ran toward him. Caver testified that Perry seemed to be trying to get his attention but ran back toward the house before saying anything. Caver heard a yell from the group standing outside the house and looked behind him. He saw the same 2 people he had noticed earlier with guns in their hands. The two people opened fire with what Caver believed to be an automatic and semi-automatic weapons because of the speed in which they shot. As Perry was walking, he saw one of the men pull a gun from his waistband. Perry saw sparks and heard repeated shots like a drum roll or a chainsaw from one gun and a pop, pop, pop from another. Perry took cover between some cars parked on Penny and was not hit. When the shooting stopped about 15 seconds after it began, Perry saw that Caver's stomach was hanging out and his legs were leaking blood. Caver was shot 9 times. He hopped toward the house, leaving a trail of blood on the concrete. When Caver reached the gate, 2 girls helped him get inside the house. They also got a towel and started holding his guts inside, which is when he realized he had been shot in the stomach. Paramedics cut Caver's clothing off at the scene and transported him to Holy Cross Hospital, where he stayed for 15 days before being discharged on April 7, 2010. The people also called L. Brown, a relative of Perry's friend whose family members called him Bro. Brown was not present at the shooting, but he had heard about it from his family and from Ken Don, with whom he told police he had a phone conversation on the evening of March 23rd. During his March 27, 2010 interview with police, Brown, who was on parole at the time, told officers that Ken Don was a Front Street Crip who was the cause of the shooting. According to Brown, Ken Don fought with a member of the Project Boys on the afternoon of March 23rd after the Project Boy accused Ken Don of shorting him in a crack cocaine transaction. Later that day, Ken Don saw 2 individuals in hoodies walk past his aunt's house. Ken Don told Brown that he thought the individuals were going to shoot at him and his friends, and that they proceeded to do just that. Ken Don told Brown that one of the shooters pulled an assault rifle from his pants and that the other was armed with a handgun. No one in Ken Don's group had a strap. 3 members of Ken Don's group were shot. His girlfriend Vanessa Rankins was hit in the face, 1 person was hit in the legs, and another was shot in the stomach. According to 2 gang experts who testified, the Pacoima Flats originated in the 1970s in the San Fernando Gardens apartment complex. It had about 250 members at the time of trial. It shared territory and an informal alliance with its brother gang, the Pacoima Project Boys, which was founded later but had about 300 members at the time of trial. The area of Penny Street and Pala Avenue, which had high levels of drug activity, was within the territory of both gangs. Both gangs used symbols and abbreviations to represent themselves. The Flats used the shorthand Pacas and PF, the latter of which had a corresponding hand signal. Members also wore Pittsburgh Steelers and Pirates attire because they had the letter P for Pacoima on them. The Project Boys referred to themselves as Proyectos, Projects, Jets, or PJB. They frequently wore New York Jets and Toronto Blue Jays attire and used the PJ hand signal. Following the trial, the jury found defendants Horacio Gonzalez and Christian Adame guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted premeditated murder, and shooting at an occupied vehicle in connection with an incident that occurred on March 15 and 16, 2010. It further found defendant Gonzalez and Adame guilty of 1 count of murder, 5 additional counts of attempted premeditated murder, 5 counts of assault with an automatic firearm, and 1 count of street terrorism arising from the incident that occurred on March 23, 2010. The jury also found Gonzalez guilty of 1 additional count of attempted premeditated murder in connection with a 3rd shooting incident that occurred on March 24, 2010. Horacio Gonzalez was sentenced to a total term of 380 years to life, with an additional 100 years. Christian Adame was sentenced to a total term of 480 years to life in prison. Vanessa Renee Rankins was 21 years old at the time of death.